Hello, everyone. Welcome to Friends and Neighbors. I'm your host today, Sandra O'Neill, with Sherry Tatum.
Are you my host today?
You're my host.
Oh, was that it?
We're
Okay.
both hosting each other.
Okay.
We don't know. Anyway, we're so happy that you're here with us.
Yes.
And, we're going to be having an in-depth conversation with award-winning author Sherry Hoppins. So, Sherry, thank you for joining us today. And thank you for writing your book Sober Cycle, Pedaling Through Recovery One Day at a Time. So really brave and courageous of you to write your memoir. I think this is such an important topic to talk about. I know you've been in church and in ministry your entire life, your adult life, right?
My entire life.
Your entire life.
I mean, I grew up in the church.
Yes, and a lot of the times people do not talk about alcoholism or addiction at all.
They hide it.
They hide it, right? So I'm so grateful that you took the time to write your memoir. Talk to us about what brought you to this point. I know alcoholism is something that people hide within the church. So what happened? Tell us your story.
Well, going back, like I said, I did grow up in the church, and alcoholism, as a child growing up in the church, you're not aware that anybody has any problems.
Right.
And church was a happy place, and I think that, especially I grew up in the Christian Reformed Church, everybody hides. Everybody had the same family, everybody had the same look, and this is thinking back as an adult when you go back. So obviously, there's a certain image that you're raised with that you have in the church, and that's kind of ingrained in you. And I don't think it's on purpose, and I don't think there's harm meant in it, but there is something in me that when I became an alcoholic, I wasn't going to talk about it at church either. There was nothing in me that was going to go talk to the pastor. And I didn't want anybody to know, because I always felt like, especially my friends that maybe weren't a Christian, it would give them the reason to say, oh, where's your God? Why didn't you count on God? Or to other Christians, shouldn't I have known better? Why was I drinking alcohol in the first place? So there's a lot of things happening. The guilt and shame definitely holds you back from, coming out as a Christian. But you can still be a Christian and be an alcoholic.
Yes,
obviously.
Now, so how did you realize that you were an alcoholic?
Well,
How did it lead up to that, though?
Yeah.
Sorry, but I've just got to know, how did it lead up to that, Sherry?
Sorry, I didn't mean to start at the end.
How did you know you were an alcoholic?
Alcoholism, like most addictions, is kind of a slow fade. And I don't have a moment where I went, that's what caused my alcoholism. We'd had addiction in our family. I had tragically lost my brother when he was 24 and I was 28 to a car accident with him and his best friend that they were both drinking. So alcohol's hurt our family in a number of ways. And I should have known better. I should have never even touched it. But there was something in me that said, I know better, that's not going to happen to me because I'm so aware of it. But spiritual warfare is very strong, along with generational sin. So for years, I didn't think I had a problem. And we started, drinking more on the weekends. And I say we, my husband was not, he didn't abuse alcohol. But we started, camping and, being at a seasonal place on the weekend with our kids growing up. And gradually there, I started to drink earlier in the week. And at the time when everybody would stop drinking, everybody else would have, like the girls would have one glass of wine. And I would have another one and another one. And pretty soon I was drinking every night of the week. And over time, I started drinking earlier in the day until one day I just realized I have a horrible problem. After my brother died, I didn't turn to alcohol, but I felt like, looking back, that I easily could have. I know that I drank to get drunk a couple times and was probably well on my way to disaster, but we had a surprise pregnancy, wonderful blessing.
Yes.
But I feel like that stopped the roaring freight train for a while, but it was about 8 years later. So I'm in my late 30s now, that things really started to escalate. And when they did escalate, it happened very quickly. And it wasn't long before I was hiding and telling no one that this was happening. And my life turned into a complete lie.
And then you mentioned that, I mean, something happens so severely that it caused you to bike, right? You biked from Michigan all the way to Texas.
That's a...
How did
that come about? So, so along with this, I'm living an incredible lie of, I'm working in ministry.
Yeah.
I'm working at a pregnancy center wearing many hats over the 10 years that I was there, but I had quit and was on a call-in basis as a volunteer. And one day they called me in to come manage the phones. And so I was doing that, and I took some messages up to the executive director, and it was a man, and he was a pastor, and he just looked at me and he said, "Where have you been hiding?" And I was in a really bad place. And I had never broken down in front of anybody, especially anybody at work, because I held my secret so close.
Yeah.
And I just it was like a dam burst, and I started talking, and the alcoholic in me, though, quickly said, rein it back in. So the lie started, instead of, I was like saying, like, I've been sober like 5 months, and we're really working on our relationship, but it was really only like 5 days, and, but he just kind of sat back and looked at me, and I thought, here it comes, probably some scripture, or he's going to pray with me, things that pastors do. And instead he said, you need to join the Ride for Life. And I was like, no. I was like, never mind. And I thought, moving on, I left. But to back up what the Ride for Life is, so the previous year he had started this fundraiser where it was a bike trip, road bike, from Michigan to Baltimore that year. And they rode to the CareNet convention, which was the umbrella over all the ministry pregnancy centers. And I happened to be in the office that whole week, and people would be like, have you heard from them? How are they doing? And I would say, no, because I think it's the craziest, stupidest thing ever. That was my attitude about it. I mean, they're raising money, that's great, but I would think about being on a bike like that for a week and just be like, no. I mean, I had a Kmart 10-speed in the garage somewhere. That was about it. And have you seen the outfits for biking?
I know.
It's like sausage casing, So I honestly didn't think about it again, but my husband was out of town for about another 6 days when that ask occurred. And I had promised him I would not drink while he was gone. And I made that promise before, but I was, for some reason, sticking to it this time. And when you're drinking, you are woken up every night around 3 a.m. and then there's anxiety, you're sweating, and it's one of the worst parts about drinking. And either you drink some more or you just stay awake and deal with it. So one of the best parts about not drinking after a couple days is there's no more 3 a.m. wake-up call.
You're sleeping through the night.
You're sleeping through the night. It's like the newborn learned, But now I'm getting woken up at about 3 a.m., and I'm kind of mad about it because that's not supposed to be happening, but I know now it was God, because I would wake up and I would be like, maybe I could. And I'd be like, could what? The bike trip thing. And I'd be like, why am I thinking about that? I'm not doing that. It's the most ridiculous thing I've ever thought of. And that happened like 3-4 times. And after my husband came home, we had a serious talk, and he said, did you drink while I was gone? And I said, no. I said, in fact, I got to tell you what happened. And I told him the story, and he was actually, I thought, by the time I tell him, this is going to be my out. He's
going to be like,
yeah, like,
doing it.
This is another one of your harebrained ideas, Instead, he just said, stop, stop, stop. He said, you said you needed help, physically, emotionally, and spiritually. And he said, that checks all the boxes. What other answer are you looking for? And right then I knew I knew I was stuck.
Yeah.
He said, go pick out a bike tomorrow.
Wow.
And I tried everything. I was like, you know how expensive they are? You know, like I tried every avenue. And by 24 hours later, I had a new bike, the most awful shorts I've ever owned in my life. In fact, the first time I walked out of the house with them on, and he said, I gotta take a picture. I said, if you do, you'll never see your children again. That will never happen. So, yeah, and
You went on the bike.
51 days later.
Wow.
Well, I would like to ask, kind of back up a little bit, and maybe you know, not just yourself, but about others. How does it make you feel? Why did you drink? Did it make you have euphoria? Did it ease your mind? Why was it so addictive to you?
Well, in the beginning, there's no doubt about it. I like to have fun.
Mm-hmm.
I have a sense of humor, and I thought, you know, in the beginning, maybe it did make me more fun. And I was always the one to stay the latest. Used to turn the clock around on our friends if they were over, you know, like one more hand if we were playing euchre or something. But
Yeah.
after a while, that wasn't entertaining anymore. And so there was definitely the party girl in me. But discovering that it took the edge off every insecurity I had, like having a glass of wine while you get ready to go away, or two, you no longer cared quite as much what you looked like to go out, deciding what to wear to an event, took the pressure off everything. It just,
Did it like de-stress you?
It takes
blurred
the edge off,
it
right?
blurred the lines of everything in life,
Yeah.
good or bad. And when you discover that and you do it for so long, you lose the ability to have any other coping skills. So the thought of that is just daunting. And I think that's the hardest part when women and myself quit, is you don't know what to do next.
Sherry, but it's also very culturally led, too.
Yes.
I mean, if you look around and you see the culture out there, to have a glass of wine with your friends in the neighborhood, or if you're going here, I mean, it's pushed out there a lot,
Oh, it
right?
is.
Yeah.
And I just recently had a discussion in one of my recovery groups that there's church events where alcohol is present. And that happened to me once since I've been sober, and I said the worst part about that is there's events that I go to, and I've been sober a while now, so it's not that big of a deal anymore. But going to an event where you know there's not going to be alcohol, I don't do the mental prep. But walking into one and there's alcohol and I'm not expecting it, it's not easy.
Yeah.
You're kind of just like caught off guard, and it's really hard, and you don't expect that in the church.
Yeah.
And
Is it a lifelong thing, though, that you have to fight, do you think, Sherry?
I don't fight it at all, but
Yeah.
I'm also not
Yeah.
I'm also not going to play Russian roulette
Yeah.
and ever pick up a drink again. I have no desire to.
Wonderful.
And yeah,
I think that's
Yeah,
incredible.
I think that's the Lord.
Well, it
in your
is.
life,
And then
too.
I'm thinking, you know, I'm looking at your book, and you say good friends don't let you drink / you slash that drink out, get sober alone. So how were your friendships? I mean, were they able to just wrap around you, or when did you come clean, I guess, that you were not going to do that?
well, after that first bike trip, you know, spoiler alert, I came home, and within 6 hours I was drinking again after having the time of my life with new friends. I mean, that trip was hard. It's chronicled.
And how many days was that trip again?
That was like 12 days. And I was with these beautiful Christian people, and I learned I could be fun. And they loved me for who I was. They had no idea what was going on in my life. And it was just the best.
Yeah.
And that taught me something, but I didn't have a plan when I got home. And that was my biggest mistake. But then I started lying.
Okay.
I pretended to be sober. And so a lot of my friends over the next, because it would be 3 more years before I got sober.
Gotcha.
And a lot of my friends, there was a lot of lying and a lot of confusion. So a lot of my friends were lost because of how deceitful I was. But the ones that stayed with me, in the beginning, they were very supportive. But people, if you're not in it, if you haven't been through it, they just don't understand.
Yeah.
Sherry, thank you for sharing your heart. We're going to take a quick commercial break, but we're going to come back and continue to talk to Sherry. Sober
Yes.
Cycle, pedaling through recovery one day at a time.
Pedaling, I like it. Welcome back, and we're with Sherry Hoppins with her book, Sober Cycle, and it's very sobering. It's her memoirs and what she went through and how she recovered. And of course, we always want to say, with the help of the Lord,
Yes.
and what He did in her life. And Sherry, I'm telling you, pedaling through recovery one day at a time is an awesome book. I'm looking through the contents of your book, and one of the chapters, I think it's this part 3, is Highway to Hell. That just jumped out at me. I said, wait, hold on, Highway to Hell. What were you talking about in Highway to Hell?
Well, I was talking about the worst day on the bike trip. I have an incredible fear of dogs in the first place from being chased on my bike as a kid out in the country. That day was full of pit bulls chasing us in Arkansas.
Oh my goodness.
I have never been so scared in my life, and I probably wanted a drink on that bike trip more than anything on that day.
Yeah.
That was the day, you know. There was many times at night I'd call my husband and just say, please come get me. You know, one time, the first day, we were like 4 hours from home, but it took us, 12 hours to bike to it. And I was like, you need to come get me. And he said, no. And I hung up on him. This happened like 3 nights in a row, but that time I was all the way in Arkansas and nobody was coming to get me. But,
Well, that's an interesting title, though, because I think we've all felt like we've been on the highway to hell a few times in our lives. But I also read in here that you said you fell in love with your husband twice.
Yeah.
So is that from when you recovered?
Yeah, well, I can get emotional just having you say that.
I think it's a beautiful statement. Well, loved it.
At the end of my drinking, November 6, 2013, that day, I was issued a choice. And he'd made this very clear a number of times, but I knew he was serious. If you drink again, you will go to rehab, or I'm leaving. And I had a huge stigma about rehab because I wanted to keep my secret. Where would people think I'd gone? And there's a lot that led up to that, but our marriage was all but over. There wasn't a lot to salvage. And through what I'd gone through that day and surrendering with God, I had an incredible Holy Spirit day, but he wasn't really ready to hear that yet because he'd heard it so many times. So I had a lot to share and a lot to show up for. And I just said to him, you should buy a breathalyzer because it's never going to happen. You're never going to need to make that choice, and neither am I. I said, game on. And he was like, yeah, maybe. I mean, he had no, and he had every reason.
Hope at that point.
He had every reason not to,
Wow.
So, but over the next couple of years, and over the last 11 years especially, since that time, we have fallen in love all over again.
Oh, I love that.
Our family has a brand new life.
Yeah.
That's so awesome.
We are a different family. We've grown in ways we didn't know we needed to.
Yeah.
But we're strong.
Do you feel like you've broken that generational
That's
curse? You had mentioned that earlier. It's this is generational, right?
Yeah.
So
I spent a lot of time fearing that generational curse for my kids. And can I say it's never going to happen? No, but I can tell you that it's much more effective to live this way and be open and honest and loving about it than to just keep saying to them, don't drink, don't drink, They know everything about addiction there is to know. And because we have this new understanding of loving each other through crisis. And I think about my grandchildren and how immersed they are in this addiction family. I don't think we're ever going to have to shake our finger at them either.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
I was going to ask you, during the time that when you were drinking and you said you were alcoholic, did it affect them? We were younger, I'm sure. Did they ever talk to you about that?
Yeah, there was a horrible Christmas one year where I say I crashed and burned pretty well, and that's in the book, and where I had to confess to them what was going on, but it would still be 4 more years before I quit. My older children, they were just about out of the house when things were getting really bad, and our youngest daughter, she was kind of the caboose of the family. She was aware that they were all aware that something was different, and I think the best way to put it is my youngest, she's a therapist now, so of course she would, be the most observant. She said, in every family, what children are aware of is that there's a background story going on in your parents' lives that you have no idea of. And she said, I read the book and went, there was a lot going on in the background.
Oh.
And it's true.
Yeah.
My parents are divorced, and up till they got divorced when I was in high school. And up till a year or 2 before that, I thought we had the perfect life. But there was always, there was background noise that I wasn't aware of.
Yeah.
They were hiding also, hiding what?
Yeah,
was-
or you don't know what's not normal,
Right.
Yeah. Absolutely, you don't. You think this isn't the norm, right? I guess.
Yeah.
When you're in it,
Or like we talked about, you go to church and everybody
it's,
stands up and sings the hymns and,
Yeah, everybody's good.
does
Yeah.
everything.
So what led you to drink? Were you stressed out? Or again, you were talking, it was just more to have fun or take the edge off?
I think that one thing that I've said is that because of what happened to my family, the walls kind of caved in my family unit growing up was not what I thought it was. And now my family's growing. You get teenagers starting to talk back to you, and
Yeah.
I start worrying about my kids when they're driving, and I'm fighting with my husband. We were growing a business. You start fighting about money or things like that. All of a sudden, this facade I'd built in my mind of exactly what my perfect family was going to look like wasn't working out. And I just feel like I threw in the towel and said, fine, I'm just going to numb out.
Gotcha.
I want to ask this one. I know we've only got like a minute or so, about a minute. Why, really, from your heart, did you write Sober Cycle?
Because I don't ever want another woman to ever feel as alone as I did, especially in the Christian community.
Yeah.
I want you to know that you're not alone.
Amen.
And you need to reach out and just tell one person or write me. There's help. And I want you to know that there's the desire for recovery, and what you find in it, the joy, is so much greater than where you are right now,
So,
that you will never want to go back.
that's so wonderful.
And the proceeds of this book, tell us where it goes.
Goes to Selah House Recovery, which I just talked about my family. Last week we did a ribbon cutting for the faith-based recovery rehab that our family is starting for women that want to recover with their faith. And that ribbon cutting was on the 30th anniversary of my brother's accident. So I looked at my family there and we said, addiction does not win in this family.
Oh, addiction does not win in this family. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back with Sherry.
So
with more
moving. It's
Sherry.
so moving. Yeah. It's so moving. Why you wrote the book.
Welcome back to Friends and Neighbors. We had a delightful conversation, a really hard conversation with Sherry Hoppins, and I want you to be able to connect with her. You can connect with her on her website, shesurrenders.com. That'll have links to her Selah House as well. So I would encourage you to get connected with someone if you're struggling through addiction.
Yes, don't hide behind it any longer. Get help. Talk to the Lord about it. Talk to your pastor about it. But get help. God's always there. He loves you no matter what. He loves you. And we thank you, Sherry, for being with us. And thank you for being here with us again on
Friends and Neighbors. We'll see you next time.